So what I've also tried to do as part of this sort of roundup is take some Texas takeaways and try and get some of the themes and the thoughts that we saw out of there, and how can we sort of take those nuggets and you can apply them in your day job. So I'm going to quickly zip through some of these, and then we'll have a little break, and you can go and blip my face. So first off, we talked a little bit earlier about kind of makers and sort of hackers, and the brand hack idea has kind of got quite a lot of momentum over the last few years. And it's starting to be adopted by not only technology companies, not only people like, say, Spotify or sort of basic tech platform companies, but even people like sort of Tesco are running hackathons. You know, this chap started off as a kind of work experience shelf stacker type dude, and then ended up as their digital media manager at Tesco, and he got them to do a hackathon. And it was all around kind of creating as many ideas as they could in their e-commerce space and their sort of direct-to-consumer sort of retail space as possible. So they just wanted to get as many ideas out of developers and out of their minds onto the table as quickly as possible. Ford are doing a really interesting thing in their latest cars. They've got a platform called AppLink. And in cars, the sort of in-car entertainment system is usually nowhere near the kind of tech that you have in your living room to play media. And that's partly because of the sort of engineering lead times that you have in cars. It's also partly the upgrade cycle. You know, it's much more expensive to buy a new car than it is to buy a new stereo. And they've been smart in realizing that people demand that kind of sophistication. They get out their smartphone or they get out of their new TV in their car. But as an organization, they can't innovate that fast, and they can't get some of those new technologies and those new applications of those technologies into their cars as quick as an individual or a startup or another company could. So AppLink, they've open sourced. So they've used an automotive grade of Linux, and Linux is an open source operating system. But traditionally, car manufacturers lock that stuff down. They won't let you anywhere near it. It's because of all the sort of safety regs, which you can imagine is quite important. But they've managed to abstract the entertainment bit, or infotainment, as they like to call it, out of that and allow people to start developing apps. And they want to create an ecosystem of apps in the same way that you have on your smartphone to do things in cars. So things like Spotify and Pandora and music streaming and all of those, and social logins and social Facebooks and applications are all going to work within your car. And you can sort of start to see then how cars will be rated not only by their sort of practicality or their features as a car, but also what it's like as an entertainment space and a place to sort of hang out. So if you want to do sort of brand-based hacking, there's a couple of questions I think you could try and ask to try and identify those solutions. So is there a big kind of broad problem that you want to generate a lot of ideas for, a lot of solutions for in a short space of time? Are you ready to engage a community of developers and then also share ownership of your future in that? Now, that's a brave thing to do, but it would be, you know, it's also a powerful thing if you're ready to do it. But also, have you got data that you can share? Have you got an API that you can open up that people can start to build on? In the same way that Philips, the sort of iPhone controllable light bulb that they've created, we've just launched a developer program for them by writing a set of APIs, and people are now writing all sorts of things to make the Hue light bulb do stuff that Philips had never thought of. You know, they're doing there's like a children's story sort of book on iPad that as you turn the pages, the lighting in the room all changes. There's all those kinds of ideas that could be quite niche, but actually could be quite powerful. So another big trend was physical, and it was everywhere you saw, there was lots of talks, there were startups. It was all around kind of the physical world, that tactile sense, you know, embracing analog and why physical is hot. It was a sort of trend report from JWT, and that was presented out there. Now, this chap, Frank Rose from Wired, his sort of thought on it was, the simple fact is we're physical creatures. You know, we're hardwired to respond to cues in the physical environment. That's not going to change. It's a little bit of a kind of pushback, an antidote to the kind of digital world that we've been absorbed in for so long. It's not that people are leaving digital. It's not that we're going to leave it behind. It's just that we sort of yearn for something more physical and tactile. And perhaps a theory of why that happens is because value is actually a function of scarcity. So the less time you spend, the more time you spend in front of a screen, the more that you would like to spend with real people and real things. You know, we start to fetishize the physical and the tactile. So there are startups, there are companies creating these things. Stitchogram, you know, it creates pillows out of your Instagram photos. Postagram, it's an Android app, but you can send your photo and it turns it into a postcard that then you can send anywhere. You know, best strap line because reality is awesome. Paper was trending. The hottest thing in South by potentially was paper. There's a lot of people talking about how paper's kind of back in. eHarmony have launched the service where you can take your sort of, your musings and they'll turn it into a handwritten love note. Beck, you probably saw a few months ago, released his latest album on sheet music. It's an almost forgotten form of art. And Minted, it's kind of, I don't know if you know Threadless, a t-shirt company. It's kind of crowdsources designs. They're essentially Threadless for stationery. So they've got loads of people designing really nice, beautiful, like letterpress stationery, really nice stuff. But it's all this really kind of tactile thing. Trying to bring it back to brands a little bit. So Perch, they're a little startup that we saw recently. They're creating these kind of interactive retail displays. So it's a little top-down projector. It has this kind of image. You put things like handbags, you pick up the product, and then all of a sudden a sort of digital projection, sort of demo of that product, it turns up on the table, and then you can interact with it, press buttons, choose what you want, check the stock, those kinds of things. But it's nice, these kind of blurrings of the lines between the physical and the digital. I think it's a really powerful space. So the kind of takeaways, I think, the questions to ask yourself are perhaps, are there qualities that are unique in physical objects that you can amplify in your services? Do you have services or products that you can make that are self-consciously analog? Can you celebrate the analog and the physical in some of your goods? And perhaps you can make physical things that represent your digital product if you're more of a digital business. So how can we just start crossing those lines? There was a trend around interfaces. So it was around, what's the next evolution of augmented reality? We saw a little bit on Google Glass. One of the interesting things about Google Glass is not only kind of what it does and the idea and, the question, would anyone actually wear that and walk around in real life? But more the way they've put thought into about, well, if you are going to have this thing on your head, how's the interface going to look, If the best interface is no interface, but you still need something. So this is a demo of what it looks like. These are little things in the top right. They call these cards. And there are a few applications, things like Evernote, things like capturing images. But essentially, they've made 4 key principles, design guidelines that they want to try and enforce. Number 1, design for glass. Don't repurpose things that you know elsewhere or other interfaces. Don't take your smartphone app and stick it into Google Glass because it's going to freak people out. Don't get in the way. Don't interrupt. You've got to be subtle, and you've got to add value, and you've got to be contextual. Keep it timely. Make sure it happens at the right time, and avoid the unexpected. We kind of know what bad interface design looks like. It's mostly in the Google Play Store. It's the difference between the App Store and the Play Store. So I think Google have got a real challenge on their hands here. But we know what it looks like when you've got every app you open and the nav bar is in a different place and it just crashes and random stuff happens and it frustrates you. And that's just on your phone. If that's in front of your eyes, it's going to be kind of difficult. So I think they've got a good vision here, but they've got a real hurdle to jump through. And I think that hurdle that they go through now is something that if we're creating digital products and we're creating digital services, we have to really think about. There was another platform, or another tool, another new sort of no-interface product that was out there, and it was a Leap Motion. So this is Ben and Lauren from our New York office. And you look at people using this product called Leap, and it looks like they have just forgotten how to use a computer. They're pointing at it and trying to make stuff happen. But actually, if you've ever seen this thing in action. It's a tiny little product, quite cheap, $79. It's just about to become widely available. It is available. They were selling it. Take pre-orders. They're in pre-orders. So I think this is going to be quite big quite soon. It's quite cheap and it's interesting. So look, this is real demos. It's not fake Kickstarter stuff. You can point to things, you can pinch your fingers, it controls what's happening in the operating system. They've got a lot of quite weird games, but they're kind of a classic tech startup. They've got this technology, they're not quite sure yet how to apply it, and that's the challenge for us. That's a challenge. How do we take our services, our products, our interface with the consumer? How do we use that and change the way people interact? I think that's quite a powerful moment. So just some questions I think to take away from this. If people are digitally overloaded in their lives, we really have to ask ourselves, are we adding value or just kind of noise to that? Be simple and timely, How do we adapt our content and make sure that it's relevant for people? And how do we know what context they're in? Now, I know we're a little bit short on time, so I'm going to rattle through a little bit here. Another thought around South by was the whole idea of innovation. And how do we get a handle on innovation? How do we make it go where we kind of need it to go and not be as random as perhaps it can be? So there are a couple of talks on that. A chap called Peter Thiel, he's one of the sort of early board directors, early investors in Facebook. A chap called Scott Cook, he's the founder of Intuit. He did a talk called Innovation and Leadership in the Agile Age. Now, the two of them had a theme that was really around thinking about the future and different ways of addressing and thinking about the ideas of the future. Like in our current age, we kind of think about things a bit like this. We're in an indefinite world. We know the future might be good or might be bad, might be optimistic. It probably was optimistic up until about 2010, and now we're a little bit pessimistic in the age of austerity, but we're not really sure what the future holds. So, but what we have to do then is hedge our bets a little bit. So that's where the ideas of like portfolio investment come from. You know, we amass money, we're not really so sure of how to spend it. So, for example, if you're running a business, one of the biggest crimes at the moment is to not turn a profit, in a quarter or a year. But some of the really innovative startups don't turn a profit for a while. So in these indefinite times, what we tend to do is focus on the process. We focus on the mechanics and the piping. This is, the global fiber optics map. Yeah, we need to connect people. We need the connections to be faster. Tech becomes an end. But actually, what's the goal of it? What are we connecting? We just try lots of things. There's a kind of scattergun approach a little bit to innovation, plus focus and emphasize the process. But if you rewind to the 50s, their visions of the future were really clear. Flying cars, cities on the moon, loads of stuff was going to happen. There was a big focus on engineering. We made loads and loads of stuff. It was about making things. There was lots and lots of investment, and that drove loads and loads of growth. But that was because there was clarity and optimism and a definite vision of what things were going to be like. Cars were definitely getting faster. People were flying into space. Rockets and planes were going loads and loads of faster. So we made money to spend it, to invest. Loads and loads of investment. And I think if you try and bring that to a startup context, there's a story where in the early days of Facebook, Yahoo tried to buy them for $1 billion. And that was quite a big amount of cash at any time, really. So Peter Thiel, Jim Breyer, and Mark Zuckerberg were on the board. They met on a Monday morning. Peter Thiel and Breyer were venture capitalist investors. They thought, we should probably take the money, $1 billion, quite a lot of cash, it's going to be good. So they sat down, they chatted it through. And then Thiel asked Mark Zuckerberg, so you earn 25%. What is it that you're going to do with your money? 25% of $1 billion, that's a lot of cash. And he thought for a moment and then thought, well, I'll probably just start another social network, to be honest. And I'm pretty happy with the social network I've got. So they didn't. They turned it down and they went on. We know the answer, rich guy. So I guess that vision, some of the best entrepreneurs have a real clear vision about the future. They don't chase luck. They don't use statistics and probability and this kind of endless cult of A/B testing and iterating. They have a plan and they execute on that vision. And I think there's something to be said about that single-mindedness. Peter Thiel, the most successful businesses have a vision of the future and it's different from the present and their value isn't apparent yet. So they didn't like Yahoo's bid because $1 billion was undervaluing them because Facebook hadn't grown to the size that it is now. And they knew that, and that they stick to their guns. So takeouts for me, if you're thinking about innovation, you want to do a labs, you want to do a hackathon, define your view of the future. Create a very specific initiative or a bunch of initiatives to get there. Anything that's distracting from that goal, anything that feels like off target, off brief, stop it. It's wasting energy. Disrupt yourself. Be the startup that's going to destroy you before someone else does. So use your innovation to get to your goal, but be disruptive. And stick to your guns. That's it. So, take a break, have a taco, have a tequila, go and blip off.